If you're not delivering a personalized interaction at every touch, then you're going to lose. It's just that simple. There's so much noise in the world today, especially as buyers, where, they're shifting in the consumer world, we're already there.
Welcome to the Modern Selling Podcast, where we help the entire sales community to create more sales conversations with today's modern buyer. This includes anyone from entrepreneurs and business owners to sales reps and sales leaders. Each episode, you will hear from sales leaders, practitioners, and influencers to help you find, engage, connect, and nurture your relationships with your buyers. I'm Mario Martinez Jr., your host, and you're now listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Postal.io, a sales and marketing engagement platform that generates leads, increases sales, and improves customer retention. Learn how you can integrate direct mail and gifting into your existing sales strategy by visiting Postal.io. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of the Modern Selling Podcast. And I've got with me my friend and the founder as well as CRO of Seismic, Mr. Ed Calnan. Ed, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, Mario.
I'm excited to have you here. It's taken a little bit of time to get you on the show, but that's okay. I know you're a busy man, and I'm pretty impressed with all the things you guys have been doing in terms of sales enablement technology, helping sales and marketers, and really focusing in on leveraging content and hyper-personalization. And those are some of the topics we're going to be spending some time on today, is really about sales engagement, sales prospecting, and personalization. And I can't wait for our listeners, and especially the sales leaders, to listen to this podcast. But before we get into that, just do me a favor. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you start Seismic? And tell us a little bit of information beforehand, because I know you're a legacy sales leader.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in sales and sales leadership for the past 25 years. Started as a seller, grew into a sales leader, and kind of have been a student of the game ever since. Worked at really big companies like ADP and Thomson Reuters and EMC. Also did a bunch of high growth companies along the way, the last one being Seismic, of course. We founded the business about 10 years ago, and we're happy to be part of this changing landscape of selling and sales tools and buyer experience. So born and bred in Boston, Massachusetts, where I sit today, and really excited to be here. I think you guys cover some really cool topics, and I'm looking forward to digging in.
Awesome. Oftentimes when I talk to folks and they were, born and raised in one city and they're still there today, people always make fun of me because I'm a San Francisco all the way, right? I've been born and raised in San Francisco area, never left. In fact, everybody in my family is still in San Francisco, except I had one person defect from the family and they went to Germany. That's my brother. Just one person, but everybody else is all here within California. And so people always think it's funny that, you didn't leave. No, I didn't leave. I travel everywhere I want, but I just stayed. Like, why do I have to leave?
Yeah, why would you leave? It's such a great city. Boston is similar. It's something in the water here where the kids never, ever, ever leave. We might go away for a year or two, but everybody always ends up back here.
Comes right back. Exactly. I love it. Well, what I want to spend some time talking to you about is a question that I always ask all my guests, and that is, tell us something that nobody would know about you, even if they were to look at your social profiles. And Ed, I know we talked about this in the pre-game show. If you would, I'm looking for something juicy, man. You got to give me something juicy. I had illegal poker ring. Someone announced that they ran an illegal poker ring, and that's how they paid their way through college on the show. I've had extra appendages. So you tell me, man, what do you want to share with everybody?
Well, unfortunately, all of my appendages are in order, so I can't go there. I'll tell you, Mario, one of the things that people don't know about me, I'm a really big guy. I'm 6'4", about 250 pounds, pre-COVID maybe. Unknown fact about Ed Calnan is that I can run really, really fast. So I have wide receiver speed for the NFL around a 4.5 40.
Shut up. 4.5 on a 40?
4.5 on a 40. I could do it in the backyard right now.
No kidding. Are you an avid runner? Like, do you run regularly, or you just all of a sudden you just got kicks and you can just put the overdrive on?
No, I'm not an avid runner, and I'm full of shit too. I can't run that fast. I just
Oh.
thought it would be funny. All
All
my
right.
sales guys are watching right now saying there's no chance that is true. Yes.
All right. All right. You had me going there for a second there. All right. So we something special about you is we got comedic value coming from you all the
I
time.
guess so. Yep.
I love it. All right. Well, very good. Well, listen, your track record speaks for itself in terms of sales leadership, and Seismic is paving the way from a leadership perspective on what you guys are doing in the sales engagement space, and really sales enablement solutions for helping to improve close rates, delivering on larger deals, and increasing the impact that a seller has with buyers. And it's essentially what we talk about at Vengresso is really about how all the modern buyer has changed, and we as a sales team have to adjust to that. So let's talk a little bit about sales engagement. First off, think about the biggest challenge that I think sellers are having today. If you look at every statistic that's been reported, including our own research that we've done, we say, what's your number one challenge today? And all sellers report prospecting. That's the number one challenge, is to get into someone's door and have a hello, have a conversation. So thinking of that, I know you guys, I know you from your own thought leadership, you've got some ideas on how do we as a sales organization increase sales engagement when we're prospecting. And think of this from the leadership perspective. We got sales leaders listening in, and that's the same problem that they have. They need more times at bats for their guys and gals on the team. And we're not getting that, especially in this virtualized world when everybody is virtualized. So talk a little bit about that, Ed. How do we increase sales engagement as a prospector?
Yeah, I think it's all about preparation, Mario, is my opinion. I think when I started selling back in 1993, when I graduated from college, like there was no information at our disposal. We didn't have cell phones, or even we had a PC, but there was really no database involved. There was no LinkedIn. There was no. Nowadays, if you're willing to prepare and willing to spend the time, you can find out everything you need about a prospect's business pains, about their shortcomings, about the things they do well, the stuff that they don't do well, what their competitors are better at them at. And I think in order to engage, you have to come in prepared and you have to be relevant. And I tell my team all the time, it's a sales manager's job to make sure their team is prepared. And you do that by watching game film before you go into a meeting and not after. And there's so much information available to leaders and reps now that if you're not taking advantage of that to differentiate yourself between you and your competitors, you're going to lose more than you win.
It's a great answer. As you know, we preach all about personalization. In fact, we have our PVC sales methodology, which really focuses in on the P for personalization. And one of the things you mentioned is about being prepared and having relevant information so that you can engage with your potential buyer. That's during a conversation, but also I think this skill that you're talking about in terms of preparation is also the skill that's required on the prospecting side of the house, right? And that's what you're talking about as well, is being able to be prepared and understand who's my buyer, what are their needs, what are the specific things going on in their company, and what are they talking about on social. And as we know, social engagement on the B2B side of the house has gone up dramatically. Just looking at even LinkedIn's usage alone, because more people are out there looking for solutions and information, especially in this COVID-19 world or in a virtualized world. And I think a lot of the companies that are out there that do, for example, sales cadence tools, they're phenomenal tools. And some of them are our partners. But we have this idea in our mind, both sales leaders and reps, and I'd love to get your response on this. We have this idea that if I hit the magic button, then I'm going to be able to hit my quota. It's going to have the 15 different emails it's going to spit out every single time, and it's a consistent approach. And inside of there, it's going to be a connection touch point on LinkedIn, and then it's going to be some generic video that's out there, and it's going to be like, hey, did you forget about me? I'm going to put this at the top of your email box. And it just keeps boom, 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 going to a buyer, and that we think that's prospecting. Is that prospecting? Is that what we consider prospecting? Talk about that.
I'm very fond of some of the companies you mentioned. There are partners as well. And I think that they do serve a purpose, right? So it's an easy way it's a more automated, more efficient, easier way to get all of the reps headed in the same direction. I think, right? So it's easier than manually training people and manually going through all that stuff. However, there is a point where the systems end and the people need to take over, right? So I can't delete emails fast enough when they hit my inbox and say, can you tell me a little bit about your business? Or are you experiencing these challenges? Or do you have 5 minutes to tell me what your business pains are? Those get deleted first, and I delete a lot of emails. However, I always make it a point at least once a week to take a call from a BDR from whatever company it is that has thoughtful prospecting, because A, I think it's good sales karma for the universe. And B, I like to reward creative young people who are trying to get the mind share of leaders. And the ones that hit me the most and resonate the best are the ones that say, hi, Ed, I know who you are. I have a really good understanding of what your business problem might be because I've solved it for other CROs at high growth SaaS companies. And here's proof. Right? So I think I understand your business problem. If you're like these few customers that I've worked with, you're feeling similar pain. And here's what I did for them. They took a call, they experienced 3x gain, or they saved a couple $1,000,000 or whatever it is. You know, I tell the reps all the time, like, we're not selling long distance service to consumers, right? We're not smiling and dialing in the phone book. If you're prospecting correctly, you're calling people that you know have a business problem. So don't ask them what their problems are. Tell them what you think they are, and then prove that you understand what they're going through.
I love what you said, and it tees up the next question that I had for you. And we'll spend some time talking about this in terms of the personalization and what we even teach as well in our own training programs for Vingresso. But talk a little bit about the role of personalization and what role does personalization play in attracting today's modern buyer? And you started going down this path, I'm pretty positive, based upon the power of some of the tools like SalesLoft and Outreach, right? Or Zant. They're super powerful tools, but there does come a point in time where we have to start thinking about how to humanize this engagement, if you would. So what role does personalization play in attracting today's modern buyer? And I think Seismic also plays a big component in this as well.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's everything. There isn't ingrained into everything we do now. If you're not delivering a personalized interaction at every touch, then you're going to lose. It's just that simple. There's so much noise in the world today, especially as buyers, where they're shifting in the consumer world. We're already there, right? If you use Netflix, it knows what TV shows and movies you like. If you use Spotify, it understands what your musical tastes are. You use Amazon and you have a young child at home, it tells you that you probably need diapers and formula, right? And yet in the B2B world, we don't do that yet. We're starting to get there, but with all of this data at our disposal, there should never be a question about what resonates with what buyer persona at what stage of the sales cycle. The machines should do all that work for us. Like we talked about at the beginning of the funnel with Outreach and SalesLoft, trying to figure out who's ready and who's ready to engage. Once that happens, we can push that information into systems that help the sellers tell the right story at the right time. And what that is really simple, in my opinion. It's, again, goes back to the fundamental base of all the things we're trying to do, which is, I understand you. I think I know what pain you have. Here are other people that looked like you and did the same job as you. And here's proof that I can help if you give me money. And most sellers don't do that. Most sellers, I think you really, in the attention span of today's buyer, you have to show up informed. You look at all of the research, Forrester, Gartner, Serious Decisions all say that 70% of the sales cycle is done by the time a seller is engaged, right? So that's a lot different than it used to be. Salespeople were teachers and keepers of information and educators back in the day. Now, you walk into a room or you get on a Zoom like this nowadays, and your buyers know who you are, who your favorite customers are, which customers don't like you, who your competitors are, what the pricing is. All that stuff is done by the time you show up. And if you start at square one and you're cookie cutter, it's just not the right way to do things.
Yeah, it's a valid point. In fact, you were talking earlier about when BDRs reach out to you specifically, and you try to take one call each week. My wife always gets frustrated with me because I'll take a call from a salesperson, and then she hears me, giving them coaching. Like, I let them do their pitch, say what they got to say, And then I'm sitting there saying, let me ask you a question. Do you know who I am? And they would say, well, you're Mario Martinez Jr. Right. But do you know who I am? And the CEO of Ingresso? Okay, yes, but who am I?
Right.
And then I would politely say to them, see, if you knew who I was, then you would understand that I'm the CEO of the world's largest modern sales training company, teaching sellers how to do exactly what it is that you're doing right now.
Yep.
And you would have probably taken a different approach and said, hey, man, I heard you on your podcast and I loved when you talked about blah, 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 blah. Now you piqued my interest. And even if it's nothing other than flattery, like I'm going to be interested. Right. So I always, take that time to do that coaching. But it's interesting, this whole concept of personalization in the messaging outreach. One of the things that we teach is in our PBC sales methodology. And I'd love to get your feedback on this. In the PBC sales methodology, there's two ways to personalize to an individual. I can personalize to the person, meaning I'm looking at something. Listen, I heard Ed on the Modern Selling podcast. I heard your insights. I'm commenting on that. Maybe something about your company, maybe something about you specifically, or I can personalize to the buyer persona, meaning to your point, I understand exactly what your business problems are, exactly what your pains are, and I know my solution does for buyers like you in your position. And that's what we call like the baseline. At the minimum, if you got nothing on someone's profile or information that you can find, then you personalize to the buyer persona, right?
Yep.
And that looks something like, as I talk to majority of sales leaders or CROs, they generally have two common problems. And for Vingresso, they're trying to start more sales conversations or get more at-bats and increase the sales pipeline. And here are two things that I want to provide to you that have helped other CROs like you. Number one is this blog article. Number two might be a webinar or an event, whatever the case might be. And here's some of the companies that have leveraged this particular training methodology and have seen these types of results.
Yep.
And then we have that closing. By the way, that's that V part that I just mentioned. That's the value. Like you're bringing content, you're giving examples. And then that C, everybody wants to go for the meeting. And like you, the 5-minute meeting, the 15-minute meeting just drives me crazy. Like I can't even get to know you in 15
That's
minutes, right?
Yes.
It just drives me crazy. No, I don't have 15 minutes, but I give you 30.
Yep.
So the closing part is that CTA. And in that CTA, we teach people to really look at a couple different ways. I could either drive to engagement, meaning, Ed, with that in mind, are these two problems your specific problems that you're having? Because I don't want to talk to a leader who isn't having a problem that is not my problem to solve.
Of course.
Right? And that's where I think a lot of reps make that mistake, is not understanding that the CTA isn't always the first touch point as get a meeting. It's confirmation. Do you have this problem?
Right.
But it also might mean a meeting. And one of the things I love about Seismic specifically, and again, all my listeners know that I don't do commercials whatsoever. So there's a lot of our great partners that are out there, and Seismic is one of them. But you guys really bring to the front this concept of leveraging content. Personalized content to the buyer persona. And most sales organizations, Ed, if I look at all of the emails that I've received in the last 90 days alone, people prospecting to me, I can only think of one who's actually leveraged content that helps to solve a specific problem that is on top of mind to me as a CEO.
Yep.
Why? Why aren't sales leaders helping sales reps to focus in on bringing content that serves me up as a buyer, personalizes that message to me, and helps solve a very specific problem? Why aren't sales leaders doing this, and why aren't sales reps getting the point?
Well, I think first of all, most sales reps are lazy. So they, I've been a career seller my whole life, but most of them are. I mean, we know that, right? You train them every day, and I've led them for a while. And, so most aren't students of the game, right? And, you get your top 10 percenters who are outstanding and will always go the extra mile to do the research and do the personalization and deliver an amazing experience that would probably sit perfectly right within your methodology. Then you get the bottom 10% who stink and are looking for their next job. And then you got everybody in the middle. And that's the control group, I think, that can stand to benefit the most. And, in my experience, sellers will respond to something if it's a change in methodology or the addition of a tool, if it does three things, right? If you save them time, if you help them look better in front of customers, and if you help them win at a higher rate they'll at least give it some attention. And that's what we do, and with our stuff, it's effortless. I mean, the content is all about who's the buyer persona, what business problem are you trying to fix, what area of the world do they live in, what industry do they play in, and what business problem do they have. And just like Netflix or Spotify, that's what our engine is best at. It's you start off with a profile on Seismic, and your profile gets smarter every single day. So when I sign up for Spotify, I say, I was born in 1971. I graduated high school in 1989. So I like cheesy hair metal and hip hop, right? And so that's where I start. But over time, it sees the selections that I pick, and the algorithm gets smarter and serves me smarter things based upon my peer group, based upon all of those factors. So that's, I think, really the opportunity to use modern technology, whether it's our stuff or someone else's stuff, to get better and make it effortless and just have the content kind of find the reps versus the other way around. Because we know they're lazy, we know systems are confusing, and if you leave it up to the reps, you're not going to achieve the results you want. However, if you can use technology to make it super simple for the reps, and the content finds them at the right stage of the journey for the right buyer at the right stage of the sales cycle, everything magically opens up. And those interactions become personalized. Because if you're a rep and you have half a brain, and I say, hey, here in your CRM system, I know you're going to talk to Mario, I know CEO of the world's most progressive sales training organization, right? Just like that BDR should have known. And Seismic says, hey, dude, here's someone like him. We work with 4 other sales training companies. Here's 2 customers that are high-tech firms in San Francisco, because we know that's where he's based. And I bet he knows them because he works with some of the coolest companies on the planet. Why don't you start with a story that says, hey, Mario, here's a business problem I think you're trying to solve, and I've solved it for a few people that I bet you worked with before. And that's it's really kind of taking a lot of the guesswork out of the game, but then bubbling it up and making it super easy for the reps to put the pieces together as they're heading to the end zone.
Wouldn't you say that what you just described, Ed, would you agree that it's learning to leverage sales content for storytelling?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And it's all about, it's stories that resonate, right? I mean, that's really all that matters. I mean, the best sellers, why a lot of my reps like to take me on meetings is because I've been old, but I've been around. I was
You're not that old. Come on.
I can still run fast though.
Yeah.
But I was
the 4 and 40.
That's right. I was I was our first BDR. I was our first salesperson. I was our first marketing person. I was our first SC. Like starting the company, it was just me and my partners, and they were all product guys. They're really, really smart engineers. So I was the engine, and I did all the first deals. I did all the expansion deals. I busted into new industries, and that tribal knowledge that's in my head allows me to engage with customers in a way that brand new reps just can't, because they don't have those interactions. They don't have those stories. It's my job to then work with the marketing team to capture those stories and make them relevant in the right moments, right? And that's the key. Is you've been through more sales training than I have, and the best reps are the ones who use the anecdotes at the right places. And people want to feel like they're part of a movement. And if you can show that other companies in their peer group and other industries that they might respect are heading in a certain direction, people want to be a part of that stuff. And it's those stories that make it real. It doesn't matter about, I can save you 15 minutes or I'll do this, I want to hear what the other CIOs are doing at the world's best companies if I'm in a similar position. That's what I care about. The X's and O's don't matter. It's connecting that kind of all of those anecdotes and stories are really what moves the needle.
I remember many years ago when I used to handle the global accounts, one of our customers was McKesson. And I had a very, very good relationship with the global CIO, a direct report to CEO, then John Hammergren, which I don't know if he is still the CEO, but in any case, McKesson is a Fortune 6 company now. And I asked, his name was Randy Spratt. And I asked Randy, I said, Randy, why do you take meetings from sales reps? Like, you're clearly being prospected from every company in the world as the
Right.
global CIO of a Fortune 6 company. Everybody wants to get in your office. I talk to you once a month and I'm in your office. We're doing coffee and lunch. Like, we've got a relationship, right? So like, what made you take my meeting and continue on with the relationship? Or what makes you take a meeting? And he said something that was very insightful to me. He said, most reps want to talk to me about what their product does. That's the wrong thing to do. In order to get into my office, in order to engage with me, what I want to know is not what your product does. Like, I'm the global CIO of a Fortune 6 company. Do I know everything? No, but I pretty much know a lot,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
So,
totally.
so what I care about, though, is you come to me and you help me understand, what are my competitors doing? And more specifically, what can you do that gives me the competitive advantage?
Yep.
And that really ties well in line with the topic we just talked about, was like, the storytelling and leveraging content that be able to articulate those stories. And unfortunately, a lot of our new sellers, well, they're new, so they don't have those stories. And some of the things that we've done with our sales team, as an example, which are relatively young and newer sellers, they don't have that, as you call it, tribal knowledge that you and I have, right? The in the trenches, what it took. When we started Vengresso, guess who was selling on the front lines? Myself and my co-founder, Kurt Shaver. So we've got all the tribal knowledge in our head. We know the nooks and crannies, what makes people tick, what doesn't. So with that in mind, that storytelling is so important. And so one of the things we do is one of our partners, gong.io, we actually have our reps listen in on those calls. You remember the good old days, Ed, when we used to have in a cube and we used to sit next to another salesperson, we had the little Y connector so we can listen
Oh
in on
yeah.
their calls?
Oh yeah.
Those were the good old days, right?
Sure.
We don't have a Y connector except for our Gong, right? Gong would be, in this case, Gong, or there's Chorus that's out there. But those are the platforms that now are that, quote, Y connector. And if you can sit there and listen, then you can develop that storytelling capability as a rep, of which a lot of people don't do. And I always tell our reps, hey, listen, if you aren't talking to yourself in the bathroom, in front of the mirror, or in the shower, or while you're driving to work, or you're driving by yourself, if you're not talking to yourself, then you're not growing. You got to
Yeah.
talk to yourself and tell these stories when you hear them. If you hear me or if you hear Ed tell a story, guess what? You're going to tell that story if it was your story when
That's
you're
right.
talking to that prospect.
Totally. Yeah, I love the folks over at Gong. They're one of our favorite partners. And Ryan, their CRO, invited me to speak in a panel last summer at their event, and it was a great event. And we were lucky because we were the last session before Steve Kerr went on to speak. So felt like the audience was a little let down when we left and he came on. No, I'm only kidding. He was fantastic. But
I was there at the event.
oh, all right. Yeah, he was terrific. What a great guy too. And I remember, I think it's all about getting to the point, right? Our jobs are different. When I was working at EMC years ago, we had an entertainment account that we had to hit monthly. So we had to spend a couple grand a month entertaining our customers to keep them engaged, right? We've moved far away from those old days, and now we're in a place where we can't even have a beer or have a coffee together. It's this, right? So it's all about substance versus style. And one of our board members was CIO at General Electric forever. Just sounds like your guy at McKesson. Big shot job. He also ran M&A for a while there, and he told me a story once. He said he loves sellers that, like you said, that help me understand what my peers are doing, help me understand where the industry is going. So I might not take advantage of all the stuff you give me, but I definitely don't want to be caught sleeping and miss something.
Right.
And he told me once an investment banker called on him and said, hey, Gary, do you want to go golfing? And he said, well, I'd love to go golfing with you, but if you and I go golfing, you're going to be doing your job and I'm not going to be doing mine, because my job is to be here at work and trying to figure out how to make the company better. And I think that's, it's a really good example of, like, now you have to show up with substance, and you can't, we're all back to back on Zooms. Some of us have families we're trying to take care of at the same time. Wi-Fi is always funky lately. And if, there's not a lot of opportunity to build those soft connections anymore. So I think it's really simple. You have to start with a personalized connection. Like, hey, Mario, I noticed that you work with these couple companies, and I know that you work with Gong, and I like that team a lot. And but let's get right to the meat of it, right? And today, in today's virtual world, it's much more important ever than it has been to show up and personalize and really hammer home the business value of what you can deliver.
Yeah. I have a saying I use in my keynotes: show me that you know me.
Yeah, exactly. Really, yes, perfect.
Show
Drop
me
the
that you
mic.
know me.
Yes.
That's been a really great conversation. Now, I want to transition into talking about what do you think is the role of video and social media and what that plays in engaging with today's modern buyer. But before you answer that question, I want all of you to listen into this message from our program sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Postal.io, a sales and marketing engagement platform that generates leads, increases sales, and improves customer retention. Postal allows you to automate and personalize your offline outreach to both existing customers and new prospects at scale. Learn how you can easily integrate direct mail, gifts, charitable donations, and even alcohol into your existing sales, marketing, and retention strategies. Visit postal.io today and request a demo so you can boost your pipeline and close more deals. All right before that short break there, we were talking about, or I asked a question about, what role do you think video and social media play in engaging with today's modern buyer? And because you guys are a facilitator and distribution arm of content, what you do oftentimes is a one-to-one engagement level, right? That's that one-to-one personalized hand-to-hand combat. But now let's transition over to the use of social media and then video as well, which video can also be one-to-one, but it also can be one-to-many. What do you see as the role of using video in engaging with buyers today, whether it's prospecting or whether it's from hello to close and or social media?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for another hour on those two topics themselves. I think, again, I think personalization and social media are almost understood now. Like if you're not, the woman who runs our social programs, she, I think, puts it really eloquently, like they're not separate anymore. There is no social media strategy and marketing strategy and content strategy. It's all interwoven. And if as a salesperson, you don't portray yourself on social media as an expert, you're going to get left behind. It's really just that simple. You hear it's our job to engage with buyers. And if you're targeting executive buyers, they have hundreds of emails per day. And I don't even pick up my cell phone anymore because the robocalls are out of control. And that's the way to engage and educate the marketplace. And our best sellers are absolute masters at the social game. One of our sales reps, his name is Evan Kelsey. He is the most creative, thoughtful, excellent salesperson using those tools that I think I've ever worked with. He's phenomenal. Every touch with an executive buyer includes a piece that they saw or something their peers were doing or a book they might be interested in, and all driven by social. With the video component as well now, here we are 6 months into this mess and there's no other way as well. I mean, we do dry runs a lot. We've been using some downtime to retrain our sales team and dry run with our field execs and our SEs. And the first thing all of us do when we're on the role plays is if the video's not on, it's stop. Like we sent kits to our SEs with ring lights and boom mics and better PCs and better webcams to make sure that their video experience is excellent. The SEs are the most important storytelling team in an enterprise software company. And if their video doesn't look great, then people aren't going to be engaged. And I think, using video content on social media for like little bits and bytes is an essential component as well. But I think it's all interwoven. There is no ifs anymore. If it's not a part of your game, then, you're just falling behind. You're going to look old.
I like what you said. You're going to look old. I was recently in a conversation and a sales leader said to me, I know that we need to be there. It's just, it's a little distracting having to think about, using social and using video. And plus I've got the phone and I've got email. and it's a little distracting. And I just simply said, I can't help you as a leader if you can't figure out that the world has changed.
Right.
I can't help you. So I did something that was like the unforgivable. And it was the wake-up call, and I hope it works. I hope we land a deal out of this. But what I said is, look, if you haven't figured out yet that your reps need to be using every arrow in the quiver, not just one, not just two, but I'm here to tell you that you're going to be obsolete in 90 days. You'll be fired. You'll be terminated. Your CEO will see no relevance in you because you're not making your plan and you're not making your number. Unless, of course, you're a Zoom collaboration company where the business is coming in as a result of COVID, right?
Right.
So,
That's right.
So unless you've got that, then man, you're obsolete. And I can't help you if I'm still trying to convince you that the world has changed and we have to have a digitally engaged, socially engaged, video centric, mobile attached buyer that is engaging with our sellers. Like, I don't know what to say to you, man.
I think that's great advice. Like, it game over right there. It's just, I mean, that's good coaching on your part. Like, there is no maybe. I heard someone say the other day, well, I'm just not really a LinkedIn guy. And I was like, well, you're a dinosaur then. Like, how do you not, like, that's our job. Our job is to educate people on the right way to do things. And, that's one of the most powerful mediums to do that.
Exactly. Yeah. And, speaking of, you mentioned your rep that you were talking about earlier was Evan. Yeah. Evan. So let's make sure we get him on one of our Vingresso lives. We have a weekly Vingresso live to showcase stories from the trenches of what sellers are doing to succeed. I'd love to get him on our Vingresso live with Vivica Von Rosen. So I know we're kind of coming up on time here, I think, and we're getting close. But one of the things as I think about this topic that we've been spending some time on, how can leaders better equip their sellers today to capture that buyer's attention? And you talked about what you guys did, which is setting out a kit. You got the ring light, make sure video's turned on at all times. And those are some basic blocking and tackling, right? If you're not doing that, then right. I don't even know what to say to you. But moving beyond that, what does that formula look like, right? How do I go about putting modern tools and modern technologies and then training my sellers to leverage these things? What's that formula look like for a sales leader?
Yeah, I think it's all about stories. It's all about stories that resonate. It really comes down to that. If you need to show up and be prepared and to prove to the buyer that you really understand their pain. You need to give them examples that they're going to care about, like your guy at McKesson you mentioned. Educate me on what the other CIOs in my space or the other most progressive CIOs are doing. And, that's the way you can help to build credibility and to also grab people's attention. They don't care about the bits and bytes. They care about the big picture stuff. They care about how can they be more competitive and how can they win more and how can they distance themselves from competitors. And that's the key. I mean, if you don't, and there's so much available to us now that if you don't take advantage of it, you're just crazy. You really are. And it's really just that simple. Like, tell me where the market's heading and tell me not necessarily what I have to do now, but in 6 months, if I didn't consider that, what am I going to look back and look stupid to my peers or my boss? That's the key. I think, if sellers do that well, and if leaders help to teach sellers do that well, then they're really going to be excited that they did.
I love what you said. Now, you and I, for our sales leaders that are listening in, let's build a tech stack for sales teams.
Okay.
We'll start with the prospecting side. You fill in the gaps wherever I've missed something or add something to it. But LinkedIn, one of them.
Yep.
A video sales acceleration tool could be OneMob, Videolicious, BombBomb, any of those types of tools, right?
Yep.
For sales technology. A tool that allows us to be able to build organizational charts. We use Org Chart Hub as an example. There's many things out there, Lucid Chart Sales and all kinds of other stuff that you can use. That helps me strategically map out, especially if I'm working mid-market or enterprise accounts, map out who are all the players in the game. That's on that pre-sale. What am I missing there? Tools like Seismic?
Nope, not yet.
Not yet. Okay, all right.
Are we moving down the stack?
Yeah. We're moving now. Now we're moving down. Like missing it, obviously the phone, obviously email, right?
Sure.
Those types of things. Those are some basic 101s, right? Let's make sure we get that inside there. And now we move down into the next layer of hello to close. Let's focus on that. What does that
Yeah.
stack look like? Tell me about
Yeah,
that.
I think it's there's a marketing automation piece in there a little bit, like Adobe Marketo or the Oracle Marketing Cloud, Salesforce Marketing Cloud, HubSpot to generate a little bit of demand. Then it moves quickly into SalesLoft, Outreach, those tools to drive engagement. Um, and then it's us in the middle that says, okay, you spent all this money from the top of your funnel all the way down to when somebody says, I'm interested in learning more. And what we do is make that effortless for the sellers to tell the right story at the right time. Because that's the most important engagement piece, in my opinion, after you've spent all the money to bring someone to the table. If you don't nail it in that first interaction, you don't tell the right story, you don't challenge the prospect with some interesting points of view, then you're just going to be everybody else. And, then after us, I guess there's a CRM component up to the left as well. And we help send and track and engage and provide a dashboard for CMOs about what the sellers are saying in the field and the stories that are resonating with the buyers. I talked to a lot of my peers. I mentioned Ryan over at Gong, Steve Goldberg over at SalesLoft, Max over at Outreach. Like we all share notes, and it's an amazing time to be a seller. It really is. In 2020, and especially if there's a silver lining of this global pandemic mess that we've all been living through, it's that now organizations are forced to engage digitally and to digitize their stacks and to think creatively. So you're probably training people a lot differently than you did 10 years ago. And it's going to continue to evolve. And like we're really, the marketing side went through it, 10 years ago, where everything got automated. And the sales side is now going through it. Like we're in the middle of the sales technology revolution. And I've never been more excited to be in sales and still learning every single day and trying to improve my game. And, it's going to be fun for the next couple of years to see how this thing shakes out. You're going to be really busy, I'm sure.
We are definitely, for us, the good news is that our business has definitely grown. And I made a prediction along with my fellow co-founders as well of the company 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago when we started Vingresso, that the world would go completely virtual. And that we needed to be able to bring virtual training as the primary training methodology. But more specifically, when it went virtual, all of our sellers needed to be able to have digital sales training skills. How do I engage with on social? What do I say? What's the right way to be able to engage? What do I look for? You talked about this earlier. We talked about it as a 3x3. Understand 3 things about this particular buyer in 3 minutes before I actually pick up the phone and call this person, right?
Right.
We look at it on video. We've got 1 minute long videos, but do sales leaders know that you've only got 7 to 15 seconds to capture your attention for me to keep watching that video?
Right.
So what do I say and do in those 7 to 15 seconds, right? So those are the types of the skills training that we bring to the market. And fortunately, I predicted that it would be a 5-year-long plan before the world went virtual. Now, of course, I didn't predict COVID, and I would never I would wish this on the world, but it came earlier. So for us, it's been good. And going back to some of the tools, as I look at building out some of the tools and technology, I failed to mention on the prospecting side, we need tools like Seamless.ai or Zoom Info that help us be able to find contact information and phone numbers. But now if I look at, we just built the pre-hello and the post-hello tech stack. There's a layer on top of that goes across both of those 2 segments. And there's a couple things that I think that are super important. It'd be also tools like Postal.io as an example, or Sendeso, which allow me to be able to engage on the front end as well as throughout the sales process with direct mail or gifts and those types of things. And by the way, you said it earlier, we can't go golfing anymore right now, right?
That's right.
So, and then we've got Gong.io. There's Chorus inside there. And there's also tools like Everyone's Social, and those are employee advocacy tools that allow me to share content out to the internet and track that. And then something, Ed, that I'm just a huge believer in, and if the company ain't buying it, boy, you better buy it yourself, and that is Grammarly.io. Grammarly just makes sure it corrects all my spelling, all my grammar, all my punctuation, and all that good stuff. And you don't know how many messages I see on LinkedIn and on email that you're like, look, man, I'm no English major and I suck at writing. I'm a speaker. That's why I have a content writer, but I can look at this and I'm like, that was bad.
It's painful. It's painful to watch.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, a couple of examples as we close up, like I think your prediction 5 years ago is going to pay off, because we have one customer who sells retirement plans to teachers. And I talked to their CIO last week, and he's planning for a world where they never get to go see a customer again. And so their sales medium was setting up a table in a high school cafeteria at lunchtime and talking to teachers as they walk by.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
now, imagine that. So that's their engagement point. Now we're trying to figure out how to get the students back into the school. There's no chance that the retirement plan salesperson's getting in that building anytime soon.
Exactly.
We also have a big medical device company who's one of our clients that's doing the same thing. They used to go into the operating room with the surgeons and talk to them about the devices they were using. Now, no chance. So as salespeople now are further pushed back, I think that training that you offer would be incredibly valuable to try to figure out how to bridge that divide. And that's talking about bringing a lot of old school sellers right to the new school in record time.
Exactly.
And, people need that stuff. My suggestion is to call up Mario, because you just can't fake that. Like, you need an expert to teach the team how to do it properly and how to get into the modern era.
I love that. I'll take that recommendation, bro. I'll take that.
Right on.
We love it. I want to close with, this, and we could probably spend a whole nother hour on this topic of conversation. And we'll see what we can do with this in just the next few minutes here, because we're running short on time. But everything that we talked about today in relation to using content, storytelling, personalization, it requires a three-headed team: marketing, sales enablement, and sales leaders and reps, quite frankly, to execute on plays. Without those three groups working together, I don't think that sales teams can be effective today in today's virtual selling world. Would you agree that we've got to have full alignment between these three different departments and organizations?
Without a doubt. It's never been more important. And it's almost like if being from Boston, I'm a big Patriots fan, but if you think about the players and then you think about the leaders who formulate the game plan, right? So every single week in the NFL, you have a different opponent, you have a different game plan. The leaders, you have the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the defensive coordinator, and they put a game plan together for the players. And they institute it along each day of the week, and then the players execute the plan. If you give the players a bad plan, they're going to lose every single game. But it's up to marketing and sales and enablement sitting in the middle to develop the game plan, put a facility in place to implement the game plan, and then the players should just go do their thing. And I grew up in a world where marketing was over there and sales didn't know what they did, and marketing was over here and they thought salespeople were lazy and made too much money. And now we're kind of all in the middle, and the enablement team is the glue. There's again, if you have a fractured organization that isn't working together as one, you're going to get beat.
I love what you said. You're absolutely right. And that is one of the reasons why, even in our own company, and we're not extremely large, but I just put the entire marketing team on a performance bonus plan. And that performance bonus plan, they're going to get a 30% increase in compensation if they hit 2 targets.
Wow.
60% of that 30% that they get as a bonus, paid biannually, is based upon hitting a conversion metric from the website to SQL. 60%. 40% of that 30% is based upon sales hitting their number.
Imagine that.
And imagine that, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the idea in our sales operations and enablement team. They just went on a commission-based plan as well, right? If you're not doing the right things in terms of operationalizing process, playbooks, procedures, and those types of things, then the salespeople don't succeed. You're going to get dinged from an extra compensation perspective. And the same with marketing. If all you're doing is bringing out crap leads to the wrong buyer persona, and you're not driving leads and the sales team's not successful, you got to have skin in the game. And guess what? If you're not performing on a quarterly to 6 month long basis, you're out, just like a sales rep is, right? Like,
That's right.
there's no longer the ability that a marketing team can sit just back and be there in a year or 2 year long position and not have produced results. No, our results are based upon a quarterly sprint, period. And if you don't meet that goal on the quarterly basis, and certainly by the 6 month time frame, you're out, just like a salesperson is.
I think we're a long way from billboards and magazine ads for the marketing team. Now it's all about cash. You got to find that money and get the revenue in the door. It's just the way it should be. We're all aligned and we're all on the same team and we're all trying for the same outcomes.
You nailed it. Well, listen, we're up on time here. And so two last questions for you, Ed. If someone wanted to connect with you, reach out to you, what's the best ways? Twitter, LinkedIn, or what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, LinkedIn's the place. I remember in the early days when I was prospecting for the first time at Seismic, every time I had someone accept an invite, it gave me a boost of adrenaline. And so therefore, I never decline invites. So shoot me an invite on LinkedIn. I'm happy to network and help however I can. And that's probably the best way to get me.
And make sure when you reach out to Ed that you send a personalized connection request and tell him, hey, I heard you.
Yeah, I mean, you could be the SDR this week. If anybody's listening on a BDR team, I pick up one a week and somebody gets a meeting, and that could be you. I might not be able to buy anything, but I'll definitely give you some good coaching.
Well, you'll know if they listen to this whole podcast all the way through. Right. If they say, I heard you say, and now I'd like some coaching. Right. Make sure you tell them you heard him on the Modern Selling podcast here with Vingresso. And then last and final question, man, is your all-time favorite movie. What is it?
Wow, all time. I would have to say The Empire Strikes Back is my favorite movie of all time. The Star Wars was the original. A New Hope was the first one I ever saw in the movie theaters in 1978, and Empire was the best in that installment. So I'm gonna go. That would be number one. It's a long list. I love movies and I enjoy all different types, but that would be it.
There you go. You take me back to our days of Goonies and E.T. and
yeah.
I asked some of our millennials, hey, have you ever seen the Goonies? And they're like, the Goonies? What's the Goonies? E.T.? E.T.? What's E.T.? Okay, you guys are too young.
That's right. At
any rate. Man, it was great having you on the show. I appreciate your insights here. For all of you listening in right now, don't turn that dial. We've got a very important message for you right now. Don't forget to visit postal.io to learn how you can integrate direct mail and gifting into your existing strategy. Postal.io is a sales and marketing engagement platform that generates leads, increases sales, and improves customer retention. Thanks for listening to the Modern Selling Podcast. Please do me a huge favor and give the Modern Selling Podcast a rating and review on iTunes. I would appreciate it. Also, if you want to easily find our show, just go to themodernsellingpodcast.com. Hey, since you'll be on our site, be sure to check out our Modern Marketing Engine podcast hosted by my co-founder and CMO, Bernie Borges. Thanks for listening in, and until the next episode, good selling.